and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exploring Death podcast. I am Lisa Jones, your host, and today I have with me Anne-Marie Murzin. She is an attorney who had a life-changing near-death experience. After this startling wake-up call, she shifted away from litigation to help clients explore death and protect their loved ones through estate planning. She is a lawyer who practices from a place of love, who knows that there is life here and beyond. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you on my show. As you know, to me, one of the biggest things that people avoid in their life is doing their estate planning and, let alone talking about death. But going that extra step and doing the estate planning, to me, is such a vital part of really what you need to do to take care of your loved ones when they, when you pass. And I went through that with my husband when he was sick. I insisted that we went to an attorney, and I was so glad to have taken care of that. But anyway, I love that you've also had a near-death experience, because I don't think there's enough attorneys out there that have.
Or we don't want to admit it,
well, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, most people don't want to admit it because, they just think people will think they're crazy, or who knows, I don't know why. But tell me, let's start with your near-death experience and,
of course.
What happened?
Well, I was just down at the Jersey Shore. I, never had any health issues or anything at all, but all of a sudden I had just a severe allergic reaction, and I felt, all my systems shutting down, so fast I couldn't call 911. I couldn't react or anything, and I woke up. Almost woke up. I couldn't speak and I couldn't see. All I could hear was trauma room 3, and everything was black. So I didn't really I couldn't communicate, I guess, like in the traditional sense, to say. And I could see really everything going on below me, that everyone was trying, everyone was sort of standing there. And I guess the most disconcerting thing was that everyone looked very puzzled. So I was like, wait, no, don't look puzzled. You should figure this out. And I really could just hear everyone just rushing, to me. And I guess in a vain sort of way, I could see that I did not have the clothes on, the same clothes I had on when this first happened to me. So somehow my clothes had gotten changed. So I guess, I don't know what that says about me, but I was a little bit vain, I think, before this. I was like, oh, wait, someone changed my clothes. But then and when I woke up, I spent a week in the hospital, and I slowly came back to being able to communicate. And after that, I took a month off or so from litigation, and I never went back. I decided to pursue estate planning, and that's my passion to really show people that estate planning doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be what everybody else does. It can be customized. And also, you can avoid all that courtroom drama. That's not an intrinsic part of estate planning.
Right. And that's what's so fascinating. I think, again, people are reluctant to even discuss estate planning because they don't even know what it means, or, it just feels very complicated and very expensive. And again, they have to confront the fact that they're going to die. So there's so many things holding people back from really, talking about it. So I just wanted so do you know what the allergic reaction was? Before we jump into that,
I know. Everyone's like, well, what was it? Well, I really think I really must have breathed something in. At the Jersey Shore, there's always, ocean breeze, going on. I don't think there's anything nefarious. It certainly wasn't anything I ate. They never figured out what it was. And,
wow.
Part of me and my family, we wonder if this was just sort of like an honestly a wake-up call, to force me to shift, to do something to help families, because I haven't had that same allergic reaction since, and they could never figure out, what it was, So
oh my gosh,
I don't know.
My whole body is chilling, which is always, to me, truth when somebody speaks truth, So I think you're right. I think it was truly just like this wake-up call to get you refocused on a new direction, which, what a blessing.
I was absolutely happy, in my life before. So it wasn't that I was miserable. It wasn't that I hated my job. It wasn't anything like that. And I did have my own will done, but not in a way that would have avoided court. And I also didn't have everything set up for my children. So there are a few loose ends there, but more, I just really now feel like I want to explain to people that, lawyers, don't have to direct everything. It can be something that you want. You can be empowered to make the decisions yourself once you get the clarity about why you want estate planning.
Right, exactly. And then one other question about the near death. Did you have kind of that, I mean, other than being above yourself and seeing people, did you have any kind of tunnel experience or any of the other classic kind of near death experience?
It was more subtle than that. It wasn't exactly like a tunnel. It was more that I could feel myself getting pulled back in a slow way. So it wasn't painful at all. But when I did come back, I could had a renewed sense of love for all people, and a renewed sense of empathy. I felt more like I could understand where people are coming from, and I've tried to work that into my practice. So when people come, it's a little awkward sharing personal information with an attorney, someone you only met here and there, or you think is nice. So I try to use that empathy that I have now, trying to get to the heart of the issue that's concerning the client.
Wow, that is fabulous. And I love that you're able to discern that, that, like you said, it was like a wake up call, and it actually shifted your thinking about people and this extra love that comes through. And I mean, that for me as well, when I had my out of body experience, the night my husband died, I had a shared death experience with him and went to heaven. And then when I came back, I mean, it completely shifted my whole foundation of being here on this earth.
Yes.
And that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's all about love and unconditional love and connecting with people. And so I think that's something that is just, it's such a blessing for those of us that have had the experience to really have the empathy and connection with people on a much deeper level.
Absolutely. And I think with estate planning, sometimes people, think it's so morbid or, dark or heavy or complex. In my experience, and I'm not sure what yours was it was just very like pure and genuine and sincere. It wasn't anything that felt complicated. It just felt like almost, this is going a little bit deeper than I expected to, but it felt like truth. It just felt like very real, on a different level. And I was, of course, grateful to come back and see my family, but also, so I do feel so blessed to have that experience, and also to be able to start my own practice. I mean, I was happy to have the resources to do that, to launch into a way to help others and still enjoy my career.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think the other aspect of estate planning, and so in our example, my husband had been diagnosed with cancer, and we hadn't done our estate planning. We had two very young children. They were 1 and 3 when he was diagnosed. And so I was adamant, again, being a former CPA and numbers person, I just said, listen, this is what's happening. And I made the appointment, and we went in and we got it done. So I think there was a lot of reluctance on my husband's part, because again, he was literally facing a terminal diagnosis, and I was really looking for, a, a place to be able to go and make sure that we were taken care of,
Oh,
so
absolutely.
so it was very scary.
People come from different perspectives, and it actually, you have to make sure that the clients meet in the middle if a husband and wife comes, or partners, whoever they may be. And sometimes children actually come to the meeting as well, to make sure that everyone is on the same page, like in a holistic approach. But that was pretty bold of you to bring this to the table.
Oh yeah.
Some
Oh
people
yeah.
just
I was
snooze button, snooze button, snooze button. They're like, oh, we'll do this another time.
Well, and that's why I brought it up, because I want to encourage every person listening right now to go and get your estate planning done before you are given a diagnosis or any kind of really confronting information, because it does make it way harder to go through that process when you're in the midst of crisis and, trying to just get through each day and, getting a diagnosis and then going through all the, the chemo and radiation, and he had a stem cell transplant. But fortunately, we got the estate planning done at the early part of it. So he was, still able to function in that regard. But I just want to encourage people, like, go get it done now. Don't wait.
But how, if I may ask, how did he take, the whole meeting? Like, what was your experience, with the attorney and that whole thing? Like, how did he feel about it?
Well, I think it went really well. I mean, from my perspective, he was an attorney himself. So it's not like he was unfamiliar with the idea that we needed to get this done. And I know that he wanted to be sure that things were in order and in place. And he didn't die for another 7 years. So it was just, fortunately, it wasn't something that happened right away. But it was nice to just get it done and have it off of our plate, because when the time came, it made everything so much easier. We didn't have to go to probate and do all those things because we had it all set up ahead of time.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's one of the biggest shifts that I have after versus litigation versus estate planning, is that before, when, a trial ends or, a case gets settled, people walk away miserable. But when they finish with estate planning, people give me hugs. It took me a while to get used to it. I love it, but it was a completely different thing. And people feel very relieved when they get this off their plate.
Absolutely. And it's such a comforting, like you said, it brings a solace and a comfort and a relief, because you understand where you do stand. Whereas before, like you said, people hit the snooze button over and over because they just don't want to deal with it. And it's, too scary. But there truly is a sense of relief and security when you're able to just get everything on the table and talk about it and get it done. So what would you suggest for people listening? First of all, how do they find an attorney like you? I mean, are you able to help people all over the country, or are you only available in just New Jersey? Or
Yes, I'm admitted in New York and New Jersey for over 20 years now, but I have a network of attorneys that I work with, across the country. So we're able to partner together, attorneys who practice similar to the way that I do. It's sort of a new way that's a holistic way. But there are things that people can do on their own. They don't, need an attorney right away just to get your affairs in order. And that's something that actually takes the longest time, is the homework that you have to do on your own, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what kinds of things do people need to gather?
The first thing that I suggest that people do before they even meet with me is to come up with an inventory of what they own. And also what is owed to them, if there are any debts that are owed to them, or, any expected inheritances, because those are two other things that you have to plan for as well. So once you get a list, you can just do at your own kitchen table, write down everything that you own. You can set that aside and then take the next step of looking at the things that you own that have beneficiary designations on them. So, most people know that you designate people on your life insurance policies. That's one example. But also traditional bank accounts also have payable on death forms or similar forms like that. So you can check all of those in your 401k or your retirement plan and see who you have designated as a beneficiary and make sure that's what you want it to be. That's a very simple step that you can take on your own. So first would be, like I said, the inventory of all your assets, expected inheritances, or, debts that people owe you. And then the next thing would be checking your beneficiary designations. But the third and most important factor, I think, is to figure out why it is you're seeking estate planning. What are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? And that's a critical piece that most people just skip over and say, oh, my mom told me to do this, or, I know it's the adult thing to do. But you can't really use the law to protect your loved ones or use the law to make the transition smooth unless you know what you want to accomplish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be some of the reasons besides just, making sure all of your assets are going to your designated recipients.
Absolutely. Well, first, you can look at yourself. If something happened to you, like it happened to me at the shore, do you have your healthcare directive in order? Have you specified, to your healthcare proxy what you want and what you don't want as it regards, medical treatment? That's the first thing. In my case, I couldn't communicate what I would have wanted if my situation had continued longer than it did. And it would have been helpful if I had already ahead of time told people, what I wanted with a living will and had it accessible to them as well. If I had that conversation so people would know, oh, this is what you wanted, versus me being like, no, I'm still in there, wait, so people could understand. So that's one reason, looking at your own health. Another reason would be if you have minor children at home. A lot of people think, for example, if you have minor children at home, the neighbor can take over or so-and-so, but it actually is a much more formal process almost in every state. And here we are traveling across state lines very fluidly. We send our kids, some of them on spring break vacation with other people, or, oh, so-and-so is going to Vermont skiing, go ahead and go with them. Well, it's a problem, of course, if you change state lines. So if you have the documents ahead of time, all of that is very clear to whatever authorities, whatever state has to access those documents to understand what you need. There's a couple other situations that people don't often think about when it relates to children. And one is, for example, 529 plans. You save money for your children and you set that money aside. In one instance that I had to help a family out, a husband had died, and the wife wanted to make sure she had access to the 529 plans, but she lived in New Jersey. The 529 plan was set up in New York, and the husband was the primary manager of the account with the children, each child as beneficiary. What happened was we actually had to go to court to get a court order to tell from New Jersey to New York, to tell the court, yes, the mother can take over these accounts. But I think she would have much rather had that money spent towards the kids' tuition versus paying legal fees to get all that work done, and the court fees for New Jersey and New York. So if you do these things ahead of time that only take literally 3 hours at the most, you would save thousands and thousands of dollars that could have been used for the kids' education.
Absolutely. That's such a great example of, taking the time to fill out the forms and making sure that those were in order. I remember the kids' 529s. Mine, thankfully, are now out of college, and but there was always a designated, beneficiary of, who could take over if I died, because generally the person, that set it up is the primary beneficiary, right? So, but
Right.
You need to designate that second one.
Right. And it really doesn't take that much, effort to get that done ahead of time. And like I said, you're saving so much money. We'd rather have the money go to your family than to have it go to legal fees.
Right. Because, and there were so many instances. I can't exactly remember everything now, but a couple of, both with my mom when she died and my husband, where, I needed to send forms and tell them that they had died. And they're like, well, no, but we need their signature and so. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're dead. Like, I can't get their signature. So eventually it did get worked around that I had between the death certificate and whatever else they needed. But I mean, sometimes the response from these companies were just ridiculous because
It is. Well, it's almost like a part-time job. I mean, if you don't do it ahead of time, you end up having 4 to 6 months of this always being on your list. Like, you're always returning phone calls or emails or going to someplace and photocopying things, paying a notary to stamp something, getting a certified copy. And this goes on for about 4 months while you're grieving, so through that whole
Right.
process, it makes it even harder and to let go. And I think there's a whole bunch of emotions, frustration, anger, confusion, because some of these things, you don't make sense. Why do they have this policy? One thing that people don't realize is that if you do have any kind of letters testamentary from a court, those are documents usually that show that you're going to be the executor. They have to be valid within 60 days. So if you get that and then you sort of delay 30 days, you only really have 30 days to send this legal document to someone else. And by the time they get it, then you need to get another one. So it's just sort of a cycle that gets created. And I wanted to get the word out to people, and I appreciate you having me, that it's really not complicated to get this set up ahead of time.
Right. I'm just raising my hand saying, absolutely get it done ahead of time, because it just, like you said, because when you're going through the grief process and you're having to deal with this, which you do anyway, even if you do have the estate plan set up, but if you've got, 99.9% of the boxes checked and everything in order, it makes it so much easier. Another thing I wanted to mention is passwords. When my mom died, it was sudden. She was in Hawaii on a 30-day vacation, and she called me the last day and said, "Oh my God, I don't want to leave. I love it here so much." She hung up the phone and then had a stroke.
Oh
And yeah,
no,
it was
I didn't know that
crazy.
about you. My goodness.
Yeah. And so my stepdad called and I flew out, and she died 5 days later. But when we went home, I flew home with my stepdad, and I sat down at her desk. I'll never forget this. And I was just like, "Okay, Mom, where are your passwords?" And I literally put my hand out right in front of me, and there was a piece of paper that was folded, and I just pulled it out, and there they were, right there, written down. And she was so organized. I mean, and she saw it after my dad, who died, and that was a whole nother experience, because he left everything into a family trust with his third wife as the direct beneficiary, and my grandmother had died just 6 months prior to him. And so the inheritance that was supposed to go to my brother and I got wound up with his estate. And then the third wife said, "Oh, too bad, kids. It's all coming to me." So it was a disaster. So my mom is like, "That is not happening to me." So she did such a great job of tying up every loose end. And even though I still had to go through it, it was maybe 2 weeks of phone calls and sending things out, but I got it done, and it was such a blessing.
That is good. I mean, people do forget about passwords, and also people also have an expectation of privacy in their own lives. So they're sometimes a little bit nervous to tell people, where their passwords are. And I've created a system myself that gives people privacy, but also makes things accessible. And other attorneys will probably start doing that as well, as, it gets to be more important to their clients.
Yeah. And it is such an important aspect. And even I remember my mom saying, "When I die, I want you to just burn all my journals. Do not read them." And I said, "Absolutely." So, I think it's so important to realize, or to think about, what do you want? And are you familiar with fivewishes.org?
No, what is that?
Oh, Five Wishes is great. It's basically a form that I think it's actually, I'm not sure if it's a living will as well that you can get
Okay.
notarized, but basically it also has questions about, if something happens to you, like if you are incapacitated, I mean, what would you like? Would you like soothing music? Would you like, people to put
Oh, that's
lotion on
interesting.
your hands? Would you like
Yeah.
to, have, I don't know, what kind of music would you like? And it's a great opportunity for people to really think about, how would they like to be cared for if they were unable to speak.
100%.
Yeah. So
Oh, I'll
that's
definitely
five.
check that out.
Yeah. FIVEwishes.org. And I think
Mhm.
almost every state approves that if people get that done. So even if you do nothing more than just, think about it and get that done, that would be a huge step forward.
Or even, if there's someone that that you would trust to be even temporary guardians of your children, that's something you can just type out, and, both parents sign, and at least they have something to go on. If it's not official, it's someone informal, just to get the kids settled temporarily. That's definitely something you can do on your own, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful idea. Because back when my kids were little, that was always the big question: is who's going to take care of the kids if something were to happen to both of us? And, so that was part of our estate plan, but it's
People can use, LegalZoom, and other do-it-yourself tools, that are online. Sometimes they're a little cumbersome, a little bit bulky, the language they put in there, still a lot of legalese in there. But if you do go to an attorney, it's important to know that you can be empowered to create anything that you want to create. So you could create a system where you have temporary guardians and permanent guardians, but then try to suggest that they go to a certain place for Thanksgiving every year. You could try to incorporate how your life was before and create some consistency for the children regarding holidays or anything else, even summer vacations that are important to you. So people at least have a guideline of knowing what you want.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's the biggest thing. And even with, this was so interesting too. So my mom had her what was it, living will in her suitcase with her in Hawaii. And we were like, oh my God, only mom, so organized. So we were able
That's
to,
funny.
I know. So she had what she needed, at the hospital. But then even that, she's like, whatever her words were, it was still hard to interpret. So the more specific people can be about what they want. I mean, she was saying, I don't want to be in pain, and she didn't want any like life-saving, extra kind of things if she wasn't able to live the life that she had. And but again, trying to interpret that, what does that mean? Like, if she was in a wheelchair, would she still want to live? But ultimately, thankfully, she decided for herself that she was going to be done, and we
And
didn't
that's
have to
why
do
it's
that.
helpful to go to an attorney versus getting the forms online, is because we can break down those different scenarios because we're educated and trained about it, but also we've seen it before. We've seen, the different things that happen, and we're able to say, is this something you want or not what you want? And for a few moments, it's an awkward conversation, but then really when you're done and you have it all out in the open, you're like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. And people are much happier once they get that all confirmed.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. In fact, let me pull some cards on this because I feel like there might be some great, insight from the universe about, people getting their estate planning done. Let's see what.
Fantastic.
Let's go to the cards.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So this is so great. So the first card is the blockage card, which is emerging. And to me, what I'm getting that universe is saying is like people, it's like they're kind of like they're sticking their heads up, like they start to think about, doing estate planning, but then they're like, no, I don't. It's like too confronting, and it's, they're nervous, and it's just a lot, right? To really take that bold step and say, I'm going to do this. So the emerging is like, yeah, that's what wants to happen, but people are resistant. That's
Yeah.
where it's blocked. Do you see that with people when they come in?
Absolutely.
Are they?
Well, sometimes the excuse is, oh, I don't want to come in because I don't want to tempt fate. What if I come in
Right.
and then I open the door to some portal and I'm gonna die the next day, or something like that. Tempting fate is something I hear often.
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing that people are like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to create it in my life. Right. And so
Exactly.
that needs to be dismissed, because it's not that you're creating that, you're creating the amazing outcome down the line, rather than letting that. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, is to not have an estate and to not just to let things fall to the wind.
And what people don't realize is if you say you don't have an estate plan, you actually really do have an estate plan, because every single state has a plan for you as a citizen. So they've created the structure for you. And so the government creates your estate plan for you when you pass. And nowadays people are more and more aware they want to do things themselves without having the government intrude in their personal life.
Right. And many times the government is the beneficiary of things if you don't decide yourself, right?
Absolutely. There's billions of dollars in unclaimed property. If people are not aware of, this account here or that account there, it goes to the government.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's your excuse right there to go in today and get your estate planning. Well, so the action card is grace. And again, universe is just saying, just allow yourself the grace, allow yourself to feel the uncomfortableness of stepping into it, but just allow it to unfold, and to, use the grace of wanting to take care of your family, and allowing yourself to go through that discomfort to let the highest outcome come through. And I
That
love
definitely
that.
makes sense to me. Yeah, I love that too, because grace is sort of soft. I think, to me.
Yes.
Versus destiny. Grace kind of seems like it has blessings incorporated.
Yeah,
It's very smooth feeling. And I
that's
think that's
right.
what the whole process should be from start to finish as much as possible.
Absolutely. I love it. And then the outcome card, this is beautiful. And as you mentioned, it's
Oh,
healing. And I think it's
yes.
so true. Once you get it done, it's such a feeling of relief and release and healing and like, oh, good, things are tied up. You've got it like a little bow on everything and you can relax and not be worried about what's going to happen, especially if you have young kids at home. The last thing you want is to leave that up to the state to decide for you.
100%. No, I agree with you. And also, if I might just add, it it's and this is strange, of course, coming from an attorney, but I can guarantee that this is just one dimension, or however you want to talk about it. Death is not really the end. There really is something on the other side. So while you're preparing for all this, it kind of also centers yourself to realize that this is something that you're going to approach and leave behind, but approach to another form of life, on the other side.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes. We need more attorneys that are talking about other dimensions.
I know I'm coming out here as a believer. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I think you're going to attract a lot of great clients this way, because I think that's another part of it is, in general, people think about calling an attorney and there's just almost like this brick wall, because maybe, if you've had a near-death experience, or, you've got this more spiritual side of you, it's hard to go into this kind of rigid attorney situation where they're very resistant to you being able to be open and really talk from your heart. So it's beautiful that you're a heart-centered attorney.
Oh, thank you. No, I really hope that I can reach people, even just to guide them in the right direction, even if they aren't clients to me, but just to reach out to make sure that people understand that the law should work for you. The law should be flexible enough to work for everyone's life, because we're all unique beings, and all of our situations, while they are similar, we don't all have, a boy and a girl, a husband and a wife and a dog. Things can be customized, and we might have different ideas than our neighbor. We might want our estate plan, to take care of our pet, or what's going to happen to our plants. I mean, there's different things that are important to everyone, and the law should be fluid enough. I think that's how I see it. The law should be fluid enough to work for all of our lives.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Well, I will have all your links on my website, but also, can you just tell people that are listening how they can get a hold of you?
Of course, yes. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. My website is www.Murzin, that's my last name, Anne Marie Murzin, Murzin Law, Murzin, law.com. And I would love to hear from you. My contact information is all on my website.
Fantastic. Well, this has been amazing, Anne Marie. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited that I'm able to share this information with people. Again, I think estate planning is a top priority for every single person, and that you are making it so much easier for people to be able to step forward and get that job done.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I really appreciate you having me. It was so nice to experience this with you.
Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.